I am. Okay, let's see. Whoopa. We got a good halfway through the book. We're okay. We're doing good. We are into Alan Wake's fiction. Oh, I'll give my sweet sip of coffee, though. Good stuff. All right. Alan Wake's fiction ranges from the visceral pulp magazine horror tales of his early career to the engrossing crime thrillers that later brought him international acclaim. While the subject matter changed, Wake's fiction itself remains charged by his own unique psyche and the doubts and fears he contends with. Wake could not escape himself through fiction. If anything, his fiction reflected a deeper version of himself. Thus we see repeated in Wake's universe stories of fractured father-son relationships, accounts of lurking evil, and of the hero's dawning awareness of his predicament. These themes haunt Wake's fiction, and give his fans glimpses into the epic forces that shape his emotional and creative life. In Bright Falls, Alan Wake confronted his most terrifying nightmare, a place where his fiction, based on manuscript pages found scattered across the area, seemed to become literally manifest. Even the lighthouse that played such a prominent role in his first published story, Errand Boy, is part of the ominous landscape of Bright Falls. The same dark power that inextricably drew me to this place is the same dark power that called to Wake. And while my journey nearly destroyed my personal life, the cost of coming to Bright Falls may have been even greater for Alan Wake and his wife. Errand Boy. Alan Wake's first published story, Errand Boy, a long out-of-print horror tale, was written when Wake was only 18 and previously available only in dog-eared copies of Dark Visions magazine. Clearly, Wake was concerned with the same battle between good and evil that he would explore in his more popular crime fiction. Oh, and thus we dive into reading Errand Boy. Hard to drive with a fist gripping your heart, squeezing tighter with every passing mile, every minute, getting him closer to the father he'd never met. Daniel managed it. He always did. You tough it out, put pedal to the metal, and never look back. Aunt Hannah, the woman who had raised him when his mother died, would have said to ignore the letter. Let sleeping dogs lie, Danny. But she was broiling in a senior community in Arizona, and besides, how do you ignore a last chance? Dear Daniel, I hope you're well. I'm not. Not sure how you will respond to this request, but I am very near death and wanted to see you once before the end. You are 18 now. Yes, I was aware of your birthday last week. A grown man, as it were, and I'm hoping you can forgive me my many sins of omission. Have things to tell you about your family history that might make the journey to plunder worthwhile. If you choose to cast this letter aside, know at least that I've often thought of you, and your mother, never without a deep sense of longing and regret. Your loving father, William Carey. So here he was, bouncing down the back roads along the North Carolina coast, completely off the grid. Nothing on either side but dense pine forest. Nothing up ahead but the edge of the world. If it hadn't been for the hand-drawn map his father had included in the letter, Daniel would never have even known where Plunder was. God probably didn't know where Plunder was. Daniel still wasn't sure what he was going to do when he finally faced his father. Hug him or drop-kick him straight through death's wide-open door. Daniel steered the old Ford pickup along the narrow, rutted road with one hand, searching in vain for a radio station with the other. The late afternoon sun streaked through the gnarly trees that overhung the road and cast twisted shadows across the asphalt. He hadn't seen another car in over half an hour. Something darted out of the woods. He slammed on the brakes too late, felt something crunch under the tires. Pulled over to the side of the road, got out. A huge squirrel writhed in the middle of the road, legs twitching. No, it wasn't a squirrel. It was a weasel. Gopher, maybe. Whatever it was unrecognizable now. Just a mass of black fur with pink guts pouring out one side, entrails steaming in the cool air. Daniel found a large stone by the side of the road, hefted it with both hands, and walked over to the poor thing. You clean up your mess, that's what his aunt always said. You clean up after yourself. You make the hard choices. The animal glared at him, hate in its eyes like hot pokers. A bubble of blood formed on its lips as it thrashed on the road, yellow teeth bared. Daniel lifted the rock and dropped it down onto the creature, crushing its skull. It shrieked, seemed to lunge at him before dying. He scooted the crushed body into the underbrush with a dead branch, wiped his hands on his pants. He was almost back to the car when he looked around, realized the woods have grown silent. Not even a bird call. Not the rustle of leaves from the wind. Not even the buzzing of insects. Total silence. He walked slowly to the car, but once inside, he peeled rubber. Big mistake not to top off the tank an hour ago when he passed the Chevron station. The needle on the gauge was barely a quarter full now. Have to fill up and plunder, which better be coming up soon, he thought. He'd imagined this would be a simple day trip. Move early from his dorm on the other side of the state, meet William Carey, and listen to his sad excuses. Maybe William wanted to teach him how to throw a curveball or tie a fishing lure before he died. Maybe give him some fatherly advice about women, family album filled with strangers. Didn't matter what William Carey was offering. Daniel wasn't accepting anything from him. Too late now. 18 years too late. So why are you doing this, Daniel? Hard to pass up the chance to meet the man he'd loved and hated and missed ever since he could remember. That's why. He pressed down on the accelerator. Truck was racing forward, not sure if he was running away from ghosts or running towards them. It was almost dark when Daniel finally broke out of the trees and saw what passed for a town. Had to be plunder since the road dead-ended just past two small buildings. A one-pump gas station and a weathered clapboard structure with Maritime Cafe painted on the side, letters dripping. A few derelict fishing boats bobbed listlessly in the harbor. Dozen shacks perched on the rocky hills nearby, looking like they were about to tumble down the slope. He cursed softly as he spotted the closed sign in the window of the gas station. Daniel parked in front of the cafe, saw an old man hunched on a stool inside, woman behind the counter. They stared at him as he got out of the car, tracked him as he walked inside. "Hey," Daniel said to the gray-haired woman behind the counter, a middle-aged wad of dough and a dirty apron and a hairnet. He sat down on one of the stools, noted the collection of ships in a bottle lined up behind her, men of war and sloops and galleons in full sail, intricately made and perfectly accurate. Strange to see such care and attention on display when the cafe itself smelled like chuck steak left in an unplugged refrigerator for a month or two. The woman fingered her apron. "You lost, hon?" "Lost? Oh, he's lost all right," the old man at the counter cackled, started coughing, wiped his mouth with the back of a grizzled hand. Plate in front of him held the remains of a fish. Head still on it, skin patchy and dotted with lumps. Took an effort for Daniel to tear his eyes from the fish. Is the gas station closed for the day?" "Lost and out of gas," drawled the old man, rooting around in his mouth with his index finger. "Pitiful. Just pitiful." "Grayson's gone hunting," said the woman. "Should be back sometime tomorrow." "No one else who will sell me gas?" asked Daniel. "Nope." Old man pulled his finger out of his mouth and stared at the tip. No cell phone, no television, no internet. He looked at Daniel, a burst capillary in the white of his right eye like a thin red worm. "You're on your own now, Buttercup, just like us." "I get it." The woman pointed at Daniel. "You're William's boy. He's been waiting for you." "We's all been waiting for you," said the old man. The woman snapped at the old man with a dish rag. "You looking for William?" the old man said to Daniel. He held up the fish and shook it, bits of flesh flying from the backbone. "Well, here he is." "Go on, Ephraim, get out of here," said the woman. She waited until the old man shuffled out the door. "I'll take you to see your daddy soon as I close up. Be just a few minutes." Daniel waited in the car, eager to get out of the cafe, eager to get out of this grimy, gunshot little town as soon as he could. It'd been a mistake to come. He slumped over the steering wheel, rested his head on the back of his hands. "Wake up, sleepyhead." The woman from the cafe waved at him as he jerked upright. "You ready to meet your daddy? Can you just tell me where he lives?" "I'd best take you myself," said the woman. "Folks around here." We're protective of William. He's got a gift. A special gift. I understand that he's sick. Well, William's been sick before, but he always gets over it. The woman spat on the street. Leave your automobile. We'll take a shortcut, she said, trudging up a nearly invisible path leading towards the water. 10 minutes later, they crested a ridge in the darkness. Saw a dirty white lighthouse perched on a rocky promontory. Looked like a wedding cake with the bridegroom missing. Waves crashed against the far side, sent salt spray into the air. There it is, said the woman, pointing. William's going to be pleased as punch to see ya. Daniel hesitated. Not getting cold feet, are you, hon? The woman showed a yellow grin, and Daniel thought of the animal he'd run over, baring its teeth as it died. Thanks, said Daniel, walking past her, the tiny hairs at the back of his neck lifting. He got to the front door of the lighthouse, looked around, but the old woman had already gone back the way she'd come. He started to knock on the front door, stopped himself, decided to go around the back. Nice to know what he was getting himself into, not be led everywhere like some lost lamb. He walked slowly around the lighthouse, listening for something inside, but there was only the howling wind. A sudden gust staggered him, drove him towards the water as though it was trying to push him in. He glanced down, unsure what exactly he was seeing under the waves, not believing it. Cars. What looked like 3 or 4 became 6, then 8, then a dozen cars at least. Vintage cars and newer models, a yellow convertible and a white minivan, more and more of them under the surface, stacked on top of each other. Daniel? Daniel whirled around. A tall, rangy man wearing a long black coat and a shirt white as frost stood not 6 inches away from him. Daniel. The man breathed his name, the wind whipping his long dark hair around his face. I hoped you would come, but I wouldn't have blamed you if... He put a hand on Daniel's shoulder, saw Daniel's expression and released him. I'm William. Not, I'm your father. If he'd said that, Daniel would have turned and walked back to his car without a word. Would have driven out of town until he ran out of gas or got a cell phone signal. William didn't say that, though. His greeting, an acknowledgement of the gap that existed between them, the snapped thread, the broken promise. Daniel stared back at the man, trying to see a piece of himself in that narrow, deeply lined face, searching for some recognition of what his mother had seen in the man. But all he saw in those sunken eyes was weariness and tension and an overwhelming sadness. Oh no, I lost my place. There we go. I know what you must be thinking, said William. You have no idea what I'm thinking. You should be grateful. William looked like he'd been slapped. I suppose I deserve that. If he was waiting for Daniel to disagree, he'd be waiting until the lighthouse crumbled into the sea. Daniel shivered. Come inside, out of the wind, said William. I'll make you some hot tea and... Daniel jerked a thumb at the submerged cars. Lots of lousy drivers around here. The storm screamed around him. Times are hard, said William. People drive their cars off the promontory, report them stolen, and collect the insurance money. Times must have been hard for a long time, said Daniel. Longer than you can imagine. William ran a hand through his tangled hair. Shall we get out of this gale and warm your bones? Daniel didn't move. I understand, said William. You don't really want to be here. You think it was a mistake coming. Most of all, I understand how vexed at me you are. 3 for 3, William. The man didn't even look at all sick. His skin was blotchy, but he moved fast enough and seemed alert. The whole thing about dying was probably a scam to get Daniel out here and ask him for a handout. You've journeyed a long way to see me, said William. And I know it wasn't pity that drove you, but curiosity. I was the same way once. Well, here's your chance to learn some things. His long face split into a smile. Besides, it's easy enough to leave whenever you like. Daniel turned away, feeling as though we were trapped in one of the cars below, driving down, down, down into the darkness, where nameless things scuttled across the ocean floor. When William abruptly started towards the door of the lighthouse, Daniel hurried after him. William held the door open for him. It had been thick and solid at one time, a true bulwark against the raging weather that now buffeted the lighthouse, but the wood was spongy with age now, worm-ridden from time and tide. William had to use his shoulder to close it afterward. Didn't even bother throwing the heavy bolt. The landing was damp and dimly lit, the gray slate floor deeply worn. Another, smaller door was set into the wall under the staircase, probably leading to some underground storeroom. An iron staircase rose up, 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 into a winding, lacy spiral. William shrugged off his coat, hung it on a hook. "This way," he called, taking the steps 2 at a time, the iron creaking. "Mind you watch your step." Daniel looked at the front door again, then followed after him. The living area on the 2nd floor contained a small kitchen with a 2-burner gas stove, a cluttered desk made of rough planks, and a sagging brown leather sofa. A pallet in the corner evidently served as William's bed, a worn quilt his only blanket. The sofa faced a small window that looked out at the ocean. Daniel could see the wind beating at the glass. Whitecaps in the darkness. "Please, make yourself at home," said William, busying himself, putting a battered tea kettle on the stove, setting out a mug, his hands huge and powerful. He shifted back and forth, glanced out the window that faced the shore. "Sorry for the poor accommodations. I don't receive many visitors." "Woman from the cafe said you're the big cheese in Plunder." William cocked his head. "Pardon me?" "A big shot. She said you have a special gift." William glanced out the window again. "Well, I do what I have to." Daniel sat on the musty sofa, sank in so deep that it felt like being swallowed alive. He lifted himself out, pushing his hands deep into the space between the cushions. Felt something hard. He pulled out a driver's license from the sofa. "Janice Cook, Middleton, Tennessee, expired 17 years ago. Pretty girl. Pretty enough to have replaced his mother after William abandoned her. Timing was right." William stood over the stove, waiting for the kettle to boil, shoulders slumped. He seemed skinnier without his coat, his face the color of pale mushrooms. The waves crashed against the rocks with a sound like distant cannon fire, and Daniel wished he were anywhere except here. He wandered over to the desk. William put a spoonful of loose tea in the mug, poured in hot water, and handed it to Daniel. Daniel took a tentative sip, nodded. "Good." It wasn't good. It was weak and sour. He shivered. "Are you hungry?" asked William. Daniel was famished. "No, I'm fine." He picked up a strip of photos from the desk. Faded black and white spewed from a booth in some tourist spot. His mother and William mugged for the camera, heads pressed together, smiling. William handsome as any movie star. Daniel's mother had died when he was 10. In all that time, he'd never seen her as happy as she looked in those photos. He was aware of William watching him with dark, sunken eyes. "What?" William shook his head. "You look so much like your mother. I hadn't prepared myself for that," he said, his voice a whisper now. "I hadn't prepared myself for that at all." The lights in the room flickered, and he glanced out the shoreside window again. "Something wrong?" said Daniel. "I loved your mother," said William, his eyes suddenly shiny with tears. The man's emotion surprised Daniel like seeing a tarantula carrying a valentine. "You loved her until you met Janice Cook." Daniel whipped the driver's license across the desk. "She must have made you forget all about us." "No," said William, still locked onto the strip of photos, oblivious to what Daniel had said. Women have always been drawn to me, but in all these years, all these long years, your mother was the only one I truly loved." "Yeah, well, did her a lot of good." "I did the best I could by her, Daniel." William gripped the edge of the desk. "I put myself in peril for her," he said, clawing at the desk so hard one of his fingernails lifted off and fluttered to the floor like a translucent moth. Daniel gaped at the fingernail, disgusted. But William seemed unaware of what had happened, distracted by sounds only he could hear. The lights flickered again. I need to go down and check the generator," said William, already in motion. Daniel listened to his footsteps fading, idly rifled through the papers on his desk. He picked up a leather-bound book. "Manifest for the Brigantine Lady of Carolina." etched onto the cover. The pages were wavy, as though soaked and later dried out, and the writing was so cramped he had to turn the book towards the light to decipher it. The entries from the early 1800s were lists of cargo brought over from England and France. Bolts of cloth and farm equipment, spices and sugar and molasses from the Indies. One of the last entries was dated April 21st, 1827. He stopped breathing as he read the captain's notes. We set sail today for the west coast of Africa to pick up a load of slaves. Our first descent into this dark and unholy trade. The men aren't happy with the task, but the big merchant ships have taken the profit from our usual cargo. We have families to feed. Ugly work to be sure, but God will forgive us in time, and the crew will cease their grousing as soon as the money clinks in their pockets. Daniel saw a long line of numbers. Ledger entries starting with 87 males, 105 females. Each entry struck, with a lesser number marked underneath. The last numbers were 31 males, 42 females. A long list of atrocities were detailed in the pages. Brutal beatings and tortures. The slightest resistance punished without mercy. The brigantine was a horror show in full sail. The last notation from the captain was November 11th, 1827. Almost home now, and with high winds to hurry us on our way, though we can't arrive too soon for me. I cannot wait for this damned voyage to be over. The screams of the Africans still echo in my head. One in particular, a village chief who cursed us all with each stroke of the lash, vowing revenge. We lost well over half our cargo before delivering them to the auction block at Charleston, but we still carry a fortune in gold back to plunder. A fine price and well worth the blot on our immortal souls that William Carey the coke bleats about. You should put that down, said William, climbing back to the living area. I should do a lot of things, said Daniel, staring at the ink blot at the end of the captain's last note, as though the pen had been held frozen over the page too long. This should be in a museum somewhere. Should be burned. Is this what you brought me up here to see? Said Daniel. The dark roots of our family tree. Nothing like an ancestor in the slave trade. Did your mother ever speak of me? Not a word. You might as well have been a ghost. William lowered his eyes. Well, wasn't a day went by that I didn't think of her. Just wished I got the chance to explain to her. A knock echoed on the door downstairs and William flinched. I shouldn't have asked you to come, Daniel. A little late for that, said Daniel. Whoever it is, tell him to go away. I can't, said William. A thin trickle of blood started from one nostril, ran down to the edge of his lip. They won't be satisfied until I've done my duty. Who's at the door? William grabbed the ship's manifest, hurled it against the wall. Who's at the door, William? Captain Riggs, William whispered. Daniel started to laugh, but the look on William's face stopped him. You're serious. The pounding on the door was louder now, insistent. We have to hurry, said William. Daniel shook him off. You don't understand. Sure I do, said Daniel. Either this is some practical joke or you really think some dead sea captain is knocking on your door. What else is there to know? Captain Riggs isn't dead, said William. Not exactly. None of them are. The sound of splintering wood echoed up the stairs. This way, beckoned William, starting downstairs. It's your only hope. Daniel ran down the stairs and found William pressing his back against the front door, which was groaning under assault from outside. Daniel joined him at the door, did what he could to keep it closed. Fortunately, when William had gone to check the generator, he must have locked the door and thrown the bolt. It still might not be enough. The Lady of Carolina went down in a storm just off the coast of Plunder, said William, straining against the door. Waves so high they snapped the masts like twigs. All hands lost. All of us drowned and washed up later that week, bellies bloated. Open up, William Carey, that's an order. Daniel felt the blows against the door beating through his body. So, those are ghosts trying to get inside? Not ghosts, Daniel. Blood flowed from both of William's nostrils now, a stream of red like a handlebar mustache. Ghosts can't hurt you. Ghosts don't want anything you have. So what are they? Daniel shuddered as a section of the door split away, his feet slipping as he tried to brace his back against the wood. The village chief cursed us for our cruelty, said William. His voice different now, deeper, with an accent that hadn't been heard in 200 years. He called the Africans cannibals, but they weren't. The chief taught us a lesson, showed us who the true cannibals were. He damned us to a wretched existence, midway between life and death, our monstrous, ravening evil on full display. A section of the door burst apart in a spray of rotting wood, and a hand reached through, clutching at them. A hand, more a talon, the skin leprous and papery, the nails black and crusted, and the stink that seeped through that hole in the door. "Stand down, William Carey, and let us in!" "Not you, William," said Daniel, squirming to stay away from that groping hand on the other side. "You weren't cursed, the manifest said." The bolt holding the door in place groaned from the combined weight on the other side. "I was the best of a scurvy lot. That didn't make me a choir boy," said William. A patch of hair fell from his scalp. "The rest of them are bound to this small area around the lighthouse, but me." The bolt started to tear from the door frame. "Me. I had freedom to roam. Freedom to find what we needed," said William. The hand reaching through the hole in the door clawed at his arm, peeling away the flesh in strips. His white shirt soaked with blood now. "My gift." He spat onto the floor. "I was an errand boy, sent to fetch and carry for the captain and crew, which made me as bad as any of 'em. Worse, even." His eyes were wide. "Plunder was ripe for the plucking, but time goes by, and soon there's less and less to choose from. Has to be maiden's fare to sustain the beasts that we'd become. Young ones, ripe with promise, fresh meat through and through." Daniel thought of the driver's license he'd found, thought of Janice Cook, thought of all the other cars piled up in deep dark water outside. Young ones, ripe with promise, brought back here by the handsome man Daniel had seen in the photo strip, the charming man kissing his mother. The townspeople tolerated this? They had to know. "Stacks of $100 gold pieces make folks forget their souls, lad." William lowered his eyes. "Sure as blazes made the captain and the rest of us forget ours." The front door splintered, half torn from the frame. "You seen the people hereabouts, lad? They're more dead than alive, sucked clean." His feet started to skid across the floor, unable to hold back the creatures on the other side. "I had to roam farther and farther afield to bring back what we fed upon." The door shuddered. We can't hold them," cried Daniel. "Aye," said William. "There's a way out yet. The other door, the one under the stairs, leads to a tunnel that goes direct to the mainland. It's supposed to be used at high tide when the lighthouse is cut off from land." Another chunk of the door burst in, and through the gap Daniel glimpsed a nightmare. Grotesque faces, puffed up drowned men with bulging eyes and rotting teeth. Faces that could never have been human. "Now!" William carried Daniel along, pushed him into the emergency exit, and slammed the door. He flipped on a dim electric light, their faces shadowed in the narrow stone corridor. Moments later, the inner door was under attack. "Go on, lad. I'll hold them back long enough for you to get out the other side. Run to your car and don't look back." "Come with me," said Daniel. William shook his head as the door bowed in. "Come with me," said Daniel. "I loved your mother," said William, eyes half closed with the memory. "Loved her too much to do my duty. There was a price to letting her go, though." He looked at Daniel. "You were the price." Daniel pulled away. "First moon after your 18th year. That would be your time. I promised Captain Riggs I'd deliver you like a fresh spring lamb." Daniel backed down the corridor. "That's it. Go!" "Run!" Daniel hesitated. "I would have gone ahead with it too," said William, voice rising. "So don't you dare consider me anything better than I am. I would have offered you up on a silver platter and ate my fill just like the rest of 'em. But then I saw you, and I saw your mother. Saw her right there in front of me as clear as the moment I met her." He shook his head. "No way I'd allow the crew to have you. No way in 80s. The door groaned, hinges yielding as a chorus of howls rose from the other side, louder and louder, ravenous. "It's over, Daniel. The captain and crew. We're falling apart now, all of us." William looked straight at him. Get out of here, you fool! Daniel ran towards the tunnel, splashing through the moisture puddled on the stone floor, his head bent forward so as not to crack his head on the low ceiling. Just as he reached the opening at the other end, he heard a scream and looked back. In the flickering light, he saw William wrestling with a dozen of them. Zombies, cannibals, slavers, whatever monstrous term fit them, he didn't know, but there was blood and brains everywhere, as William beat them back, using the narrow doorway to his own advantage. There were too many of them. Desperate with hunger, and he gave ground with every passing second. Daniel saw one of the slavers tear into William's leg with his teeth, heard William howl as ferociously as any of them, his face contorted, hair falling out in clumps as he ripped and tore at them. "Dad!" Daniel didn't intend to say it, and would never have believed himself capable of saying it, but as the word echoed down the corridor, William looked back at him. It was dark. Barely enough light to see anything at that distance, but Daniel thought he saw William straighten, nod his head in acknowledgement, and then he was lost under the undead swarm, lost in a tumble of rotting flesh and bones bursting through parchment skin. Daniel ran out the end of the tunnel, ran up the hill, and didn't look back again. 30 miles outside of Plunder, a long way from the highway, Daniel's car finally ran out of gas. He listened to the engine gasp and die, the silence of the night rolling in like fog. Just him alone with the stars now. Tried his cell phone. Still no signal. He sat there for a few minutes, got out, and started walking. The end. What a delightful tale of fatherhood. Aww. There we go. It's a little bit like the plot of Smoke Signals if they'd gotten to Phoenix and had found cannibal zombies. So I'm going to have to say it was a little derivative, Mr. Wake. I don't know. All right. Return to Sender. The third novel in the Alex Casey crime series, Return to Sender is a treasure trove of clues to this author's internal life. In this first chapter, Casey's survival is in question, and he must directly challenge the evil that threatens him. Wish fulfillment on Wake's part, or a strategy for confronting his own personal monsters. Chapter 1. Light You Up. If Anton, the Fat Man Dubovic, had ever earned a Boy Scout merit badge in fire prevention, I wouldn't be in this mess. If the two sluggos with the Fat Man weren't scared to death of him, one of them might mention that spraying high-octane gasoline around a garage could have unpleasant consequences for all concerned. Everett Krieger, the sage of Wall Street, is screaming loud and clear about the fire hazard, but since Krieger is currently trussed up and the object of that high-octane drenching, his opinion isn't given much weight by the Fat Man. One spark, one gunshot, whole place goes up like a napalm strike. Not that any of this would mean shit to me, except I'm currently hiding under Krieger's candy apple red Ferrari, which has about 7 inches of road clearance, and the gasoline that Fat Man is hosing down Krieger with is sluicing across the concrete floor of the garage and soaking me to my boxers. You must understand, Mr. Krieger, said the Fat Man. I am not a nice person. I heard gasoline sputtering onto the concrete as Krieger bubbled. The fumes were making me lightheaded, but nobody else seemed to notice. Then again, they had murder on their minds. I bet you will stink when you burn, Mr. Krieger, said the Fat Man. I bet you will stink like the bad barbecue that upsets my tummy. Gasoline is cold, by the way. Real shivery stuff. And Krieger's screaming had given me a headache. Plus, the tip of my nose kept grazing the underside of the Ferrari, so it was raw and sore by now. I was about ready to slide out from under the car, cap the Fat Man and the Slogos, and warm myself up with my own burning hair as the whole place whooshed into flames. But I didn't do that. Instead, I carefully tilted my head to get a better look at what was happening a few feet away from me. Promised myself that next time, I'd exercise better judgment. I won't do that either, of course. I'll never learn. Sure, should have passed on the job when Krieger's daughter showed up last week, but the girl was scared to death. Lots of scared girls out there these days, but she did it better than most, and her being a homely kind of thing won me over. dragging a kid along to boot. Hit me in my soft spot. All that family money, but Jane Krieger stayed a plain Jane. Big thick glasses and awkward shoes. Way she slumped her shoulders when she talked. Made me want to take care of her. She said her father, Wall Street financier Everett Krieger, had gotten involved with some dangerous men. She was too worried about something happening to him. I know you're much too talented for bodyguard work, Mr. Casey. I just want you to keep an eye on Daddy. My father don't even have to know you've been hired. He'd probably be upset with me if he found out. Turns out, Everett Krieger hadn't just gotten involved with some dangerous men. He'd ripped off the Fat Man, a sweaty psychopath linked to the Russian mob. Anyone who thinks that fat men are jolly has never met Anton Dubovik. The last thing that cracked the Fat Man up, really gave him the case of the giggles, was that recording of the 911 call from a woman who'd been carjacked in Texas. You heard it, haven't you? The woman knows she's on her way to a real horror show, but she manages a cell phone call from the trunk of her car. Connects to a 911 operator who's got the hiccups. The woman keeps whispering about being kidnapped. 911 operator can't hear her because he keeps hiccuping into the receiver and the cell phone signal is dying. Woman's panicking. 911 operator keeps on hiccuping, saying, pardon me, y'all." Regular laugh riot. Found the woman's body a week later. What was left of her, anyway. Fat Man plays that tape all the time, and it never fails to bring tears to his eyes. Even imitates her voice. And the hiccups. So when the Fat Man huffed and puffed his way into Krieger and Associates a year ago, wanting to park $18 million, Krieger should have very politely suggested that Mr. Dubovik would be better served at one of the many other fine investment houses. But he didn't. Instead, Krieger told the Fat Man what he told most of his clients. Expect 10 to 12% annual returns, cash out anytime you felt like it. Things didn't quite work out like that. Krieger's enormous bet against the Australian dollar went south, coupled with a government takeover of the Nigerian oil industry and a crash in the Brazilian bond market. Well, Krieger and Associates suddenly collapsed like one of those fancy soufflés that Krieger used to jet to Paris to nibble on for lunch. Krieger dodged a federal indictment by liquidating all his assets, offering his clients 10 cents on the dollar. Most of his clients settled. But the Fat Man wasn't interested. Fat Man has never tipped a waitress or even heard to say, keep the change. I told you, I don't have any offshore accounts, pleaded Krieger. He was a handsome, well-maintained Aristocat. Aristocat? Oh man, got Disney on the brain or something. Him. Well-maintained aristocrat who struggled helplessly now, hands bound behind his back, his body roped tight to a supporting column of the garage. Gasoline dripped from his perfectly cut gray hair. Don't you think the feds would have found him by now if I did? I should trust Fed dummies, the Fat Man laughed. Fed dummies cannot find their ass with GPS. I imagine Krieger once took a certain pride in having his own gasoline pump in the garage. Special blend for the Ferrari. Might as well have been jet fuel. Perfectly safe as long as you gassed up in a well-ventilated space. But the Fat Man likes his privacy, so the doors to the garage were down, the gas running free and the fumes in the garage so thick that a bright idea might set the place off. From my vantage spot under the car, I could see Krieger's charcoal gray trousers and his socks. Cashmere socks with tiny clocks on them. Probably cost $200 a pair. What do you expect? They're made from the downy wool scraped off the balls of mountain goats in Tibet. The Fat Man doesn't wear socks. Just slips his 14 Triple D Tootsies into a pair of blue corduroy bedroom slippers from Target. Throws on a bathrobe and off he goes. Fed dummies did not find secret estate of yours, yes, said the Fat Man. Anton found it, though. So now, you pay me. I can't pay you. Gasoline gushed against Krieger's necktie, splashing his Armani suit in perfect Windsor knot. Gasoline ran from his pants leg as though Krieger had pissed himself. There is no can't, Mr. Krieger, said the Fat Man. There is only yes, Anton. Here are the numbers to my offshore accounts. And, "Please to forgive me for making you wait, Anton." The fat man had a point. The feds hadn't discovered this 100-acre estate in the rolling hills of upstate New York. Probably registered to some shell company that existed only in Bahamanian Corporation's financial footnotes. So give the fat man some credit. I wouldn't have found the place if a terrified Jane Krieger hadn't called me early this morning, given me the location. Said she was sure something was going to happen. I shifted slightly. Saw the two sluggos. Couple of nervous 3XL meat bags and blue tracksuits. Each of them standing on a radial tire to keep their shoes dry. Like that's gonna save them if the garage blows. Smart thing to do if you want Krieger to give up the information would be to drag him outside. Drench him with gas out there. Maybe the fat man wants to use the safe familiarity of the garage against Krieger. Likes tucking a guy into his soft, comfy bed. Maybe fluffing his pillow before breaking out the vice grips. "I am losing patience, Mr. Krieger," said the fat man, his thinning black hair plastered to his skull. "You seem to delight in provoking me." "I'm an honest businessman," said Krieger, lower lip quivering. Fat man's tiny eyes glowed as he pulled out a gold cigarette lighter out of the pocket of his bathrobe. "Boss," said one of the sluggos gently, "you really don't want to do that." Fat man held the cigarette lighter in front of Krieger's face. "I will light you up like birthday candle." "Boss, please," said the other sluggo. "Krieger goes up, we all go up." He dragged his shoe through the puddled gasoline on the floor. "See, boss? Boom. Boom." The fat man nodded, pink jowls jiggling in the glare of the overhead fluorescence. "Ah, yes. I understand now." He slipped the lighter back into his bathrobe and pulled out a switchblade. "This is safe, yes?" he said to Krieger. "Won't cause fire." He flicked it open, admired his reflection in the blade, and I found myself wondering if hippos thought they were beautiful too. Krieger swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. The fat man carefully slid the blade into Krieger's right nostril. "See?" He looked at the sluggos, waited for a moment, then ripped the blade through the side of Krieger's nose. "See? No boom." Krieger howled, lurched against the ropes that bound him to the pillar, blood pouring from his nose. "You will give me the numbers for your offshore accounts now," the fat man said to Krieger. "Please," stammered Krieger. The fat man slid the blade into Krieger's other nostril. "Wait!" "Yes," said the fat man, cupping one ear. "Did I hear something?" "The account numbers," Krieger said, his cut nostril flapping with every breath. "The account numbers are encrypted. Can't be cracked. You need me alive." "Then alive you stay, good fellow." The fat man slowly, gently removed the blade from Krieger's nostril. "Where are the numbers, Mr. Krieger?" I was lying right under the edge of the Ferrari's passenger side, soaked with gasoline. I hoped Krieger would direct him to the house, his office, any place they would have to leave him alone, or at least divide their forces while they confirmed his stay. "They're under the car," whimpered Krieger. "The numbers are in a small metal case, attached to the underside of the passenger compartment." "Great. Just great." I scooted farther back under the car, looking for the case. There. A silvery case the size of a cell phone. "Are you certain?" said the fat man. I could see the case clearly. Stainless steel, secured with 2 spring clips, locked solidly in place, designed for quick removal when needed. "If you are stalling for time, I will lose charming good nature, Mr. Krieger," said the fat man. "You think I'm stupid?" said Krieger, blood bubbling from his nose. "You're not going to kill me. You need me, Anton. Get the case. We'll have to go to my office in the city to decrypt the code. I'll transfer the funds into your account tonight. Double your money." The fat man nodded. "I believe you, Mr. Krieger." Krieger sagged with relief. "No, you are not stupid," said the fat man, looking into his eyes. "But I think you are perhaps too trusting of your own uniqueness." He smoothed Krieger's stained white shirt with one hand, then drove the knife into the man's heart with the other. "It seems, in fact, Mr. Krieger, that you are not required to decrypt the code," he said, cleaning the blade on Krieger's necktie as the man's head flopped lifelessly. He slipped the knife back into his bathrobe, turned to the sluggos. Please to hit the hydraulic auto lift. I waited until the Ferrari was waist-high off the floor before sliding out from under. The case clutched in one hand, I waved as I scrambled to my feet. Hey, fellas! How's it hanging? The sluggos reached for their guns before they caught themselves. The fat man just yawned, belted his bathrobe tighter around his enormous frame. Open the garage door and air the place out, idiots, the fat man said to the sluggos. Then you can shoot our uninvited guest. He raised his bushy eyebrows to me, half bowed. My sincere apologies. I pulled my own piece out, centered it between my legs. They're centered between his eyes. I don't know why the fuck I said legs. I don't know what I'd be implying then. None needed. Ah, the classic standoff, said the fat man, unperturbed. I feel like one of your American cowboys at the A.O.K. Corral. He pushed out his lower lip. Let us leave the door down, shall we? Gunfire hurts my ears anyway. There were way too many teeth in his smile. I want to see your face when they break your neck, my dear cowpoke. The sluggos rushed me, but they were slow, clearly used to easy prey. I dodged the first one's attack matador style, helped him along with a push that slammed him face first into a metal tool cabinet, dropped like a slaughterhouse steer. Another sluggo circled in, but he was cautious now. He sloshed through the gasoline closer and closer, and I let him. Because he was one of those big guys who forgot to keep his chin down. Maybe never had to worry about it before. Grabbed my left shoulder, grinding down on the bone before I drove my right hand into his throat, crushing his windpipe. Fell to his knees, trying to breathe as his airway swelled shut. My left arm was completely numb as the fat man charged, barreling at me. He moved faster than the sluggos, faster than I would have believed. One swipe of his enormous paw practically tore my ear off before I could retreat, head ringing. He kept coming. Kicked him twice in the midsection. Kicked him hard. Strike should have shattered a few ribs, maybe even ruptured his spleen, but the fat man was so padded with blubber he grunted, his smile firmly in place. Killer whale in a blue terry cloth bathrobe. The fat man circled in as I backed up. Not leaving so soon, are you? Mocked the fat man. We're just getting to know each other. Way past my bedtime, I told him. I need my beauty sleep. The case. The fat man snapped his fingers. Give me the case, and maybe I will let you go on your way. Give me your address, I'll mail it to ya. I fainted high as he rushed me, then pivoted. Whip-kicked his left knee, heard it crunch. He ground his teeth as he collapsed, but he didn't utter a sound. He sprawled beside the Ferrari, bathrobe sopping up gasoline. His smile returned. I looked down, saw what was making him so happy. 3 small dots on my shirt. 3 small red dots getting larger. Hadn't even seen him take the switchblade out. Hadn't felt myself getting stabbed. Come closer, little one. I'll put a band-aid on your boo-boo, said the fat man. That's okay, I said. Fat man patted the floor beside him. Come, no hard feelings. You look like a guy who holds a grudge. Me? The fat man wiped an imaginary tear. You hurt my feelings. Unsteady now, I clutched at the case, but it slipped from my grasp, clattered to the floor. I bent to retrieve it, stumbled and kicked it under the car. I could see it clearly, right under the transmission. A pity, said the fat man, eyes on the case. Whatever shall you do now? The red spots on my shirt were getting bigger. You really should sit down before you hurt yourself, said the fat man. I staggered towards the door, legs rubbery, half fell onto a wooden bench against one wall. Isn't that better? Called the fat man, grunting as he bent under the Ferrari, one leg dragging behind him. You just take a rest while I get the case, and then we can have a long talk. I gave him time. Gave him until he was halfway under the car, his hand on the case before quick limping it over to the controls of the hydraulic jack and flicking the switch. The fat man squealed as the jack lowered, slithering across the slick floor trying to get out. Almost made it out, too. Got his head free, anyway. Rest of him pressed against the concrete by the weight of the Ferrari. You comfortable? I asked him. Little tight. You might rise it a bit. Sure. I lowered it slightly. Heard him gasp. Whoops. What do you want? Hissed the fat man. World peace? Fat man chuckled. Had to give him credit for that. Ah, you mean now, I said. Well, I'd like to know how you found Krieger's secret estate. Fat man glared at me. Spots on my shirt were growing, but it was nothing terminal. Did hurt, though. I lowered the Ferrari a little more. How'd you find this place? I repeated. A beautiful little bird told me, the fat man said. His breathing even more labored now. Lucky you. Birdie told me wasn't so beautiful, I said. Sad. I watched him squirm under the Ferrari, grunting with the effort, trying to get clear, but he was caught. No two ways about it. I walked over to where Krieger's body hung from the post. Fished his wallet out of his suit jacket. Nice wallet. Probably looked better on the alligator, but still. Not much cash in the wallet. Rich guys never carried much cash. But Krieger had a black invitation-only, no-limit Amex card, so I guess he had it covered. Could buy a skyscraper with that card, and all they'd ask was, "You like that gift wrap, sir?" 2 photos. One of Krieger on an airport runway, standing in front of his Gulfstream 550. The other of Krieger and some beautiful girl. Strong family resemblance, though the daughter had better cheekbones. Beautiful girl, beautiful bird. No kid, no wedding ring. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the fat man still struggling under the car, but I couldn't take my eyes away from the photo. Women are amazing. Get rid of their contact lenses and slip on a pair of ugly glasses and they look different. Don't wash their hair for a few days, just let it lie there in a tangled mess, look even more different. But it's the attitude that really sells things. Slump around, eyes downcast. Let your voice quiver at the right moments. You're a whole new person now. You're no longer that gorgeous, confident, sexy creature in the photograph. Now you're the mousy little introvert that shuffled into my office, begging me to watch over her daddy. Fat man had met the beautiful bird, because that's what worked best to snare him. Me met the plain Jane, the not-so-beautiful bird, the one with the borrowed kid, because that was the one who'd get to me. Figured no matter what, one of us was going to deliver the overseas bank codes to her. Looked at Krieger dangling there, his shirt a gory mess. Brilliant guy. Tough and cold-blooded, but he wasn't even in the same league as his little girl. Should have just handed all his money to her, whole secret stash, and saved his life. Maybe if he'd cooperated, Jane would have given him allowance and let him keep the Gulfstream. Glanced over to the fat man. She tell you she knew how to decrypt the code? Let me out of here. Doesn't matter. If she doesn't know how to do it, she's probably already got some other sap on the line who does know how. I have case, you foolish person. Let me out. You have the case. I held up the thumb drive I'd palmed earlier. I have what was inside the case. The fat man screamed in rage, flopping around in a pond of gasoline, his neck extending from under the Ferrari like some enraged turtle. Hey, smart guy! He somehow managed to get one hand free and was holding the shiny gold cigarette lighter over the pool of gas. The fat man's hand shook. Come die with me, boy chick! I slammed the hydraulics just as he flicked the lighter. The Ferrari crashing down on him before the gas could ignite, squashing the fat man with a loud, moist pop. Blood mingled with the gasoline, sent rainbows swirling across the floor. I had to turn away. Dabbed at the spots on my shirt with my fingertips. I didn't feel so good, but I felt better than the fat man. Fat man's organization was going to be coming after me. Not like they'd be crying in their vodka over what had happened to him, but still, couldn't allow some freelancer like me to step on the big boss. That's okay. Nothing like people wanting to kill you to make you appreciate a slow sunrise, a fast car, or a fresh cup of coffee. Fat man's organization was the least of my problems, though. It was Jane I was worried about. Slipped the thumb drive into my pocket and started for the door, wincing with every step. Coded bank numbers weren't going to do me any good, but they were going to bring Jane running. Her or the next guy she'd lined up to play fetch. Didn't matter. I opened the door, stepped out into the cool night air, and kept walking. Yeah, I might be looking over my shoulder, But Jane better keep an eye on her rearview mirror, too. Plain Jane or Beautiful Jane, whichever one I met next, she's gonna find out who her new daddy is. Mr. Lake? Goodness gracious. You can't just declare yourself daddy. Non-fiction. The following chapter and essay were part of Agent Nightingale's dossier. It appears that while his recent visit to Bright Falls was the first time he'd actually set foot there, in fact, he had been investigating the small town for some time. Whether it was persistent and recurring dreams that led him to the town, as they did myself, or whether his research was part of a more formal investigation by the FBI, I have only hints and suppositions. Suppositions. The worst word in the English language, perhaps. The dossier itself is equally puzzling. One can only surmise Nightingale's rationale for including an account on the treatment options at a Bright Falls clinic specializing in the care of artists, and a litany of bizarre local events dating back more than 100 years. What I do know was that Nightingale's dossier was not a capricious collection of unrelated data, but the work of a trained law officer. Though emotionally unstable, Nightingale was a meticulous researcher, a man desperate to discover the dark secret of this town, a secret he feared was about to metastasize. Mr. Stewart, it's fine. We understand your SAT score was big. You don't have to put all of the words they gave you in the English portion on this one page. Thank you. A secret inextricably tied to Alan Wake. The Creator's Dilemma by Dr. Emil Hartman. Dr. Emil Hartman's The Creator's Dilemma was an unusual publication in that while it targeted a mass audience with its promises of creative growth and renewal, it was underpinned by vaguely cosmic theories relating to the powers of artists. His insistent caveat that one could only benefit from these methods by becoming a quote-unquote guest at Cauldron Lake Lodge suggests, in this editor's opinion, that he was motivated by an ulterior agenda. Whether it be financial or another darker purpose, remains difficult to assess. Preface: The Instruments of Creation. Art is not merely an imitation of the reality of nature, but in truth a metaphysical supplement to the reality of nature. Friedrich Nietzsche. The artist is a chimerical contradictory figure, revered and despised, worshipped and persecuted. He has been called shaman, trickster, priest, madman, blasphemer, and fool. Sometimes he has been all these things at once. We sense somehow that the greatest artists are possessed by a vision that is beyond their ken. They venture to places the rest of us would not dare. They risk everything in pursuit of their goal. They bring back treasures, and occasionally they unearth objects that should have been left buried. It is in the course of their adventures, however, that these heroes of desire are occasionally injured or, as is so often the case, they injure those closest to them. Such are the occupational hazards of the creative craft, and it is to those problems that I dedicate the following pages. 35 years ago, I began my training as a garden variety psychotherapist at Holland Memorial Hospital in Vermont. I administered daily kind relief with a smile and a handful of pharmaceuticals. While those encapsulated therapies had their place, for they pacified and calmed so many of these troubled souls, they did not allow our patients to overcome their various psychological challenges. They often withdrew and became lost inside themselves. I had certain patients in my care who exhibited signs of artistic ability. Their works were not refined or sophisticated. They had rudimentary technique, and they were utterly ignorant of the prevailing aesthetic trends of their day, but they were possessed by some burning desire for self-expression. The work was often raw, brutal, and ugly, but always arresting in its ferocity and starkness. These were individuals producing what we now know of as outsider art. I left this small hospital some years later, but the image of those damaged souls carving their dreams into canvas and clay stayed with me. I went west and eventually settled into private practice in Washington State. Here, I found that while many of my patients were far more functional than those at Toland Memorial, they were afflicted by some of the same problems. In them, I saw this same urgent desire for self-expression of problems, hopes, disappointments, desires, coupled with an inability to express these things that were most important to them. They could talk about their problems, certainly, but they could not rectify their internal life and so create some form of accommodation between what was so essential and pure inside them and what so often felt to be drab and mundane reality of their external world. We encounter here, as we will again and again, the creator's dilemma. Dreams that wake monsters. The artist's voice sings as though he summoned the power of the oceans and ether. However, at times, these energies can become blocked, and the artist may think the well has gone dry. And so, he finds another outlet for his creative energies, predictably descending down the familiar trajectory of depression, alcohol, and other forms of self-abuse. Many years ago, I had a patient who worked under the pen name of Philip Musil. He was a talented playwright, attractive and socially adept. He produced some notable dramatic works for many years until he hit what he often referred to as the glass wall. This glass wall, as he saw it, was the end of his writing career. Through the wall, he could see his potential future of creative production. But now, it seemed like it belonged to someone else. Day after day, he would batter himself against it, injuring himself in the process to no avail. The words that had come so easily to him in the past had ceased. He might have had the occasional idea for a play, but when he attempted to write it down, all he saw on the page were the broken fragments of other writers' dreams. His own ideas no longer had the power to seize his imagination and carry him through the all-important first drafts of his fiction. This went on for a year before I met him. He joined us here at the lodge several years ago, which he admitted felt more like an artist retreat than a psychiatric institution he had imagined. He was a difficult case and for the first 6 months was unable to produce any usable work. For a period, he even began exhibiting certain indications of cognitive slippage and delusional disorder. This worried his family, who began to feel he should be brought home. After a troubling visit in which he did not recognize his mother and sister, he was returned home, though his symptoms worsened. He would go on long night walks and return home injured but unable to explain why. He could conduct conversations with animals and trees. These bizarre behaviors went beyond their ability to help or understand him, falling squarely into what Carl Jaspers once called the doctrine of the abyss. Philip was returned to us some months later, and after a brief course of neuroleptic therapy, he soon began recovering, returning to more predictable patterns of ideation and behavior. We worked through this period with a combination of pharmaceutical encouragement and what I have come to call engagement therapy, and its sister method, the flow. It wasn't easy, but we persisted. Philip began producing amazingly imaginative work. It was a thrilling time for Philip and all of us at the lodge. Lives were changed during that period. He stayed with us for 2 years, eventually producing his 6-hour opus, Nightfalls. While no one would consider this flawed work a masterpiece, it restarted his career and allowed him to get beyond the glass wall. Of course, it would be disingenuous of me to suggest that all psychological and creative problems are solvable. At times, there are those who are beyond help. One of my greatest professional disappointments was the now famous case of Daniel Sanders, the monumental sculptor from Oregon. His storied career was only 6 years long, and in that time, he produced 6 immortal sculptures. These were highly sought-after pieces, both for their rarity and the fact that each of the 6 had been quickly purchased for undisclosed amounts by institutions and collectors in far-flung locales such as London, Rome, and Kyoto, all places where he was regarded as an American master. A methodical worker by nature, he would rise each morning at 5, walk directly to his studio in a little wooden cottage behind his home. On the day in question, he was to begin his 7th work. A 3-ton cube of rough white limestone had been delivered to his studio the previous evening, and it stood there, like a solemn mourner, awaiting its transformation. He'd assayed and quarried the block a fortnight before, and had numerous visions of how he would shape the alabaster surface of the stone. He saw dancing children, prisoners in cages, piles of dying dogs, the gentle faces of long-dead lovers, fantastical sea creatures, and obese copulating couples entwined around each other. The limestone block could have been any of these things, but this morning, when he went into his studio and picked up his chisel, he found himself faced with his end. The images he had imagined beneath its surface faded away, and he saw only a 3-ton cube of limestone staring back at him like a bemused stranger. He persisted, told himself that this was a white-hot box of potential and possibility that stood before him. He had only to strike it and realize his vision. But instead, he sat down, stared at the block. He walked around it, slapped it for good measure, but inevitably returned to his stool. He sat there for an immeasurable time. 3 days later, he was found on the floor by his neighbor, still staring at the white stone. He had shat his trousers and reduced himself to a dehydrated and wasted state by the time the EMTs were called. He lay on his side, perfectly still, perfectly conscious, still staring at the white stone. He was brought to us by his relatives, and I worked intensely with him for a period of 3 months to no avail. We used charcoal to draw figures on the stone and encouraged him to cut it. We tried a battery of drugs and hypotherapeutic methods, cyclical psychodynamics, integrative approaches, electroconvulsive therapy, sensory deprivation, daily multi-theoretical psychotherapeutic counseling, and tough love. Finally, I threatened to destroy the thing, exploded into a million shards, fearing it had become some psychic anchor around his neck, but he howled like an animal and swore it would be as though I was killing him. He had become physically bound to this object. We ceased all therapy at this point, and he was isolated in his own wing. He was allowed visitors, but chose to live a solitary existence. After a month, ideas began to return to him. He saw ocean waves, trees, dark clouds, ravenous birds, and a secret country to which he might travel, but only through the stone. He'd become convinced that this project would be his masterwork, that this stone was his door into that secret country where his future now lay. He saw the image of what he would create so precisely, but feared it was so complex he did not have the skill to execute it. Paralyzed by his perfectionism, the vision he held had become an idea fixe that returned him to his apparent stupor as he awaited the precise and perfect moment for the first strike. The pharmaceuticals had no effect. The therapies did not work, and I am sad to say that Mr. Sanders remains with us at the lodge, sharing his basement room with his white monolith, transfixed by the vision of this door to his secret country. Again, as before, we see the Creator's dilemma. I continue to hope that we will break through to Daniel using a long-range therapeutic approach I am currently developing at the Cauldron Lake Lodge. His case may indeed lead to the final fruition and perfection of my 2 patented therapeutic methods: engagement therapy and the flow. I hope this book will serve as an introduction to engagement therapy and its sister method, the flow. I would like to caution, however, that this humble tome cannot replace actual treatment with an accredited therapist from our lodge. The unfortunate truth is that these therapies cannot in fact be captured in a book any more than you can learn dancing or swimming from a book. Creativity is like the deepest of lakes, and this book will only skim atop its glossy surface. To dive deep into that vast lake of your own creativity, to venture to places you barely suspected inside yourself, I encourage you to contact us here at the Cauldron Lake Lodge. That said, I will show you, the artist, a rough sketch of how to break free of the resistances, conflicts, and blockages that have stalled your creative maturation using engagement therapy, TM, and its companion method, the flow, TM. The problems of the working artist are manifold and can involve 1. Complete blockage. 2. Obsessive perfectionism. 3. Creative and technical plateaus. 4. Libidinal inversion and negative sublimation. 5. Rigid thinking. 6. Insomnia. 7. Distraction and unfocused attention. 8. Detachment and disengagement. 9. Cathaxis and anti-cathaxis. 10. Creative impasse. 11. Anxiety and ideational hysteria. 12. Traumatic mnemic traces. Never want to hear that. 13. Diffusion of instincts. 14. Identity failure. We love to experience death of the self. These are but a sample of the problems I have worked on with our guests at the Cauldron Lake Lodge. Through intensive sessions of engagement therapy, and its companion method, the flow, you will involve yourself in exercises that force you to confront the sleeping monsters inside yourself, but that also deliver you to creative heights you could never imagined. We will till the soil and work to remove these psychic impedimenta that have found their way into your process. Through engagement therapy and the flow, we work to build the channels of communication between your subconscious, your waking consciousness, and your higher consciousness. The ego, the id, and the super id. Which it doesn't specify in the book, but that's what he's talking about. Get your Freud on. Yeah, Hartman. Of course Hartman would be a Freud guy. Being bothered by a fly. Your newly integrated mind will allow you to finally take control of your life so that you can live in a waking dream and externalize your deepest aspirations. This heightened state will lead to greater mental clarity and increased creativity, well-being, and happiness. The bygone cliché of the depressed and impoverished artist should be cast aside as a relic of 19th century romanticism. You can live the happy and creative life you'd always hoped for. You only need to release your greater self. Liberation from the self. My approach focuses not on the goal or task-oriented practices of the recent faddish therapies. There's no 12-step, no plan, no formula to be applied to any and all. Herein lies the importance of joining us here at the Lodge. Our practice relies on a very basic suspicion that has been held by artists since time immemorial. I have worked with writers, sculptors, photographers, architects, game designers, musicians, jewelers, weavers, videographers, and conceptual artists. When I ask them to tell me about the most creative period of their lives or work they are particularly proud of, a hushed silence falls upon them, and they tell me their secret. They admit that they are imposters. They tell me they are fakes. They concede they did not write or sculpt or compose their greatest work, but they were simply the instrument of a larger creative force. An author who took possession of their bodies and minds to create their greatest works. It came easily, and as if by no effort of their own. They will say to me with the greatest reverence, and sometimes with tears in their pitiable eyes, "It did not come from me. It came through me." We take that approach to heart at the Cauldron Lake Lodge, where the heavenly vistas of the Pacific Northwest and the deep waters of the lake from which we take our name serve as sources of inspiration to our guests. As Mallarme once wrote, "The poet disappears. This is absolutely the discovery of our time." And indeed, these techniques will encourage you as the artist to fade into the background of your art, So your mind and body are but instruments in its creation. There are great, powerful forces at work around us, unimaginably strong, but they can be harnessed through intellect and courage. Like a raging river, they can be channeled, dammed, and released at will. We at the Lodge can show you how to broker a move away from egocentric art and towards a grander form of expression, one in which the work stands before the artist, and the world is transformed as a consequence of your creative acts. I have spent some time discussing the tenet that the artist must disappear in order to create, but let me encourage some cognitive dissonance for a moment with a contradictory idea, and it is the core problem I will discuss in this book. It is what classical theologians and philosophers have discussed through the rubric of creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing, or what I have variously referred to as the creator's dilemma, or the God problem, as it were. Let us leave the theological questions behind us for the moment, and consider this experience, this fleeting moment, in which a writer like Philip faces a blank page, or when Daniel looks upon his white monster. I would like you to put yourself into that trembling silence a dancer feels in the penultimate moment before she launches her body upon the brightly lit stage. The artist understands that in this frail quantum of time and space, anything can happen. Moreover, in this moment, which my patients have described as magical and electrical and otherworldly, there is the possibility that one can create, like a god, something from nothing. But it is also in this moment that a little thought may creep in and whisper, "No. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. You cannot possibly delight, instruct, inspire, or surprise your audience. Your words, your hands, your deeds are dead. You cannot create something from nothing. You are not a god. You are but a mortal. If allowed to grow, as it so often does, this seed of doubt can destroy a creative life. I firmly hold the belief that artists are gods, perhaps gods of lesser universes, but divine authors all the same. They create something from nothing. Engagement therapy and the flow will be your pathway to working daily as a creator of your own universe. Trust me with your creative recovery, and we will build something grand and beautiful together. At the Cauldron Lake Lodge, the creator's dilemma is our dilemma. Now, let's begin, shall we? Well, well, well. What a perfect alignment with the ending there. So there's the ittiest, bittiest, tiny bit left. There is just the history of Bright Falls left. So we'll read that before we start in on 2. I'll probably have a little bit of additional time because, well, I can run Alan Wake 2 okay. It doesn't run great. And I've upgraded my CPU since then. But I do have to upgrade my GPU. So that has been purchased. And it'll theoretically be here this weekend. But it might not be here until the 7th. So if it's not here until the 7th, we'll have an additional, some not Alan Wake 2 horror day in between. So we'll finish reading this that day, come hell or high water, I guess. You know. But as it goes. Babies. So yeah. So we'll have one more little reading thing, because it won't even be a full hour the way this was. It'll be like 10 minutes. Like, let me see. So literally all we have left to read is page 103 to page 129. Which, yeah. Nothing. It's an A6 sized book. A size here to mean nothing to most people, but it's what it is. So that'll be good. So yes. Hopefully we'll be able to spend October playing Alan Wake 2, but I don't know. It all depends on when a GPU arrives. Thumbs up!